Well, Mr. Dayo Akintobi joins us this morning for the paper's review. He is editor-in-chief of TCN. Thanks for joining us today.
Always a pleasure to be here, and happy Women's Day.
I was going to ask if it was okay to say Happy International Women's Day to you.
Absolutely, it's a celebration for all of us.
Especially if you're Yoruba, you know how to greet for almost everything. This is just one of those things.
I don't know how is it also something that political parties are taking into cognizance, because on the front pages of some of the dailies this morning, it is the political parties that lead, the pack. Let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, and this is how you will find what you will find on the front page of Daily Trust newspaper is APC crisis. Boni's fate hangs as Bello takes charge. That's what you will have on the front page of Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And that's it right there on your screen. Have Buhari's blessing to act, Niger governor. How governors plotted coup. NEC decides on Yobe governor Tuesday. Presidency, Boni mum. The story is on page 6 of the paper this morning. What's your take?
Well, the waters are still quite murky on this, because we're not really sure if this was a palace coup or if we're not sure what's really going on here. But for all intents and purposes, it looks like there's actually been a change of the guard. Reason is, well, the former acting chairman of that committee, my Malambuni, is actually away. He's out of the country at the moment. And ostensibly, the official reason given for what happened yesterday with Sani Bello is that the acting chairman is away. So I'm acting for the acting while he is away. But in light of the immediate recent past, we know there's been a lot of disgruntlement with Boni's shepherding of this committee, primarily because there seems to not be the will to organize this convention and choose the chairman and the executives of this party. It's 2 years now that this committee that was inaugurated simply to organize a convention so they could choose a new party leadership, and they've not been able to do it, or they've chosen not to do it, and they've postponed 3 or 4 times. And people are suddenly getting to think it's intentional. And the political pundits are trying to read the leaves, and the conventional wisdom seems to say that Buni has some hidden agenda. He's trying to defer the convention to as close as possible to the primaries, because he has an interest in the vice presidency, and that he believes that if the presidential ticket is zoned to the south, the vice presidential ticket will go to the north, probably the northeast, and he's eyeing that position. And so for that reason, it's not in his interest for the convention to happen quickly. He's got some governors on his committee who are backing him. Even the governor yesterday is in that same committee with him as well. So people are looking at it and they're saying, why is it so difficult for him to organize this convention? And it's now gotten to the point where the convention has now gotten conflated with the party primaries, because they're coming so close together that you are not able to separate them from each other again. So that has further muddied the waters. Then you look at the steps he took yesterday, inaugurating the state chairman of all 36 parties, receiving the zonal report from Kwara State Governor Abdul Razak. These are substantive issues that would not be handled by somebody who doesn't have substantive authority. So the fact that he was able to do these things yesterday leads us to believe that there may have been a changing of the guard, irrespective of the denials.
But, for a journalist, in terms of putting this out to people, do you think this is good? This is part of the whole build-up to having, smooth, or at least, how do I call it now, a primaries that is top-notch. You try to sieve all the credible. I think that's the term. Do you think this is part of the whole build-up, or this is a drawback? This is like 5 steps back.
Well, it could be looked at as 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards. So there is some measure of progress. But the way you look at it simply is that they need to have a credible primary. Initially, the problem was, how do we conduct the primary? Do we do consensus? Do we do direct primaries? Do we do indirect primaries? Then the party itself resolved that internally and say, okay, we're going to choose our chairman by consensus. And so they are trying to create a persona that will lend credibility to the process, but it's so haphazard and inconsistent in getting to the process that it's leading people to wonder, if you can't even organize something as simple as a convention, how then will your primaries be smooth? And even if you get through the primaries and you win, how will you run the country effectively?
Very interesting times. I guess, wait a minute, for a journalist, you certainly do know how APC works, but don't answer that.
Well, that's why he's a journalist.
It's my job to know.
Well, beneath the pictures, it's a picture story of sorts, but then the story is on page 3. Cocaine dealing. Don't send me to prison. Chiari begs, pleads not guilty. Seems this is just a continual build-up, isn't it?
Well, it kind of was a bit of it was heart-rending to see how this man has fallen so low and from grace to grass, from someone who was so celebrated. When I heard that plea yesterday, don't send me to prison, it was almost a tearjerker for me, because I saw that as a microcosm of everything that ails us in this our beloved country. And when I heard the plea, the first thing that came to my mind was he recognizes the fact that there are many people in that prison that he put there. And if he gets put in their midst, his life is probably meaningless from that point on. And it just goes to show that justice, you can't escape justice, and the chicken will eventually come home to roost. And I look at it and I say, these are the people who were given the responsibility to maintain law and order, to enforce the laws, to prosecute those who were antisocial and were breaking laws and were being criminal. And to think that they themselves succumbed to the lure of filthy lucre. I've had this belief that law enforcement, the job itself, they have to mingle with criminal elements for intelligence, for undercover information, for heads up on things that are about to happen. And even when they arrest them, they have to debrief them and interrogate them. So they're exposed to a lot of things. Look, for example, the accusation that when he arrested Evans, part of the money that they found at Evans' place was not delivered completely, and part of it was short. Evans made that cry over and over again. So you have to understand the psychology of the people in our law enforcement and their ability to resist the lure of being drawn into that criminal enterprise, because they're exposed to it on a day-to-day basis.
A capacity to resist has to be quite huge.
As a famous Nigerian politician once said, may our loyalties never be tested.
And you know, they say to catch a thief, you have to act like a thief. What if you
Precise.
act like a thief for too long?
You become a thief.
Well, you said it. Oh, goodness. I mean, it's interesting to see some of the, the headlines on the front pages. So let's turn our attention to Nigerian Tribune quickly. And this has a very interesting twist to the big one, which is the APC leadership tussle. Can I call it that? Well, let's take a look at the headline. Niger governor assumes APC chair, says, I have Buhari's blessing. Suezan State Chairman, APC Zoning Committee submits report to Bello. Sanwo-Olu, Bello, Zulu Muzodima in attendance. Buni will resume his position today, associate. So the part is, I have Buhari's blessing. Is that a game changer for you? First, do you buy that on the one hand, and does that change the face of this tussle?
I buy it for two reasons. First of all, I don't think he would have had the temerity to get up there and do these things without having formal backing from the highest echelons of the party. Secondly, if you look at the build-up to the event, you saw this sheer formidable security architecture out there, and the setup and the anticipation of what was coming. It wasn't impromptu, it wasn't spontaneous, it was planned, it was approved, and I believe the president basically just pulled the plug and says, enough is enough with all this waffling and not being able to organize this convention. It's time to have a change at the helm, and let's get this thing done, because ultimately it's going to affect our credibility with the Nigerian people.
Isn't that interesting? Pardon,
yes.
that I didn't say I have next blessing. I have the president's blessing? Is it the president's blessing that makes this legal, or the biggest or the highest organ of the party?
The president is the leader of the party. The
It doesn't make up the neck alone, does it?
No, it doesn't make up the neck alone, but nothing is done in the party without the president's blessing. He's the de facto leader of the party, and it is his ideology essentially that the party will carry out. So they will go to him and get his approval or his acceptance of any sort of major ground-shaking change such as this. That
It would seem like that party administration has been turned on its head in this Fourth Republic, because you would recall the Second Republic and the Third Republic. The party chairmen were the leaders of the party, so to speak. But it would seem that in this republic, we seem to have turned that on its head. Yeah. Do you see us in it? And in this, for almost all parties, do you see any time that will press the reset button? And because being leader of a party and leader of a nation or a state is quite a tough one.
Well, I think the days of the strong party chairman are over. Let's remember the turbulent reign of Adams Oshiomhole, which is basically what gave rise to this extraordinary convention planning committee, because the way Oshiomhole was unceremoniously effectively booted out of office due to the turbulence of his reign, I think that left a sour taste in people's mouths.
Yeah, I'm not even just talking about, my apologies, I'm just even talking about just one political party. I'm talking about all of them across board.
I understand.
I remember, you would recall, the role political party chairmen played in the Second and Third Republic, compelling their elected officials to abide by the philosophies and manifestos of their political parties.
Yes.
That was their primary role as leaders of the party, the national chairman or the state chairman of the parties, making sure that their elected officials toed the line of the parties. But it would seem like that has changed now.
It has absolutely changed, because now all of a sudden you see the governors in the states being the ones dictating what happens in the states, even over and above the party, the state party chairman. Yeah. So you see the same thing happening also at the federal level and at the local government level. And essentially it just shows the way our democracy is evolving. And what is happening more or less is that those who wield political power within government are able to subjugate those who are outside the official corridors of power.
Which begs the question Chiari asked, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it would depend on which side of the fence you sit.
There you go. I saw that coming.
Is that a political answer?
Well, clearly, that's what you hear. More headlines on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. You see Soyinka Akintobi Adeniran secure Igboho's release. He was released on medical grounds, lawyer leave. So this is, I don't know how that one hits you really, seeing that all of the action is happening outside of Nigeria, and it would seem as though Nigeria does not exactly have much to do in all of this. So do you think this would just end without Nigeria's, input, or Nigeria getting this one?
I'm sure there was some input from the Nigerian government before the Benenua government took the step it took.
In the first place, or this one?
No, this one.
Oh,
I'm sure there had to have been some measure of consultation, because truth be told, it looks like even if the charges weren't trumped up, he was held this long without bail for what are relatively mild or minor charges. For him to have been held for almost a year without bail, it looks like the Nigerian government was pulling strings behind the scenes, and so I don't think his release yesterday on health grounds would have happened if the Nigerian government had more or less done a wink wink, nod nod, yes. So I think there may be attempts at a political solution to this quagmire, because as you know, a lot of Yoruba elders, a lot of Nigerian leaders have been have stepped in and been appealing to the president and to the government to find a political solution to this. And
so this is a political solution?
It may be the beginning of one. It looks like it. I don't think the Benenua government would have taken this step if they were not encouraged by the Nigerian government.
Good. And there's this sad one. BRT, missing 22-year-old female passenger found dead. Driver arrested, speaks. I think this is one of the saddest stories I've seen in recent times. The build-up, the fact that, hopes were high, and then yesterday we got the news that, she was found dead. A really, really sad one.
Yes.
Of course, the Chiari story makes its way to the front page, so let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
Good morning, Malpe, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you, gentlemen. I see you're already having a party without me. But hey, I won't be too late to this party. Good morning, Mr. Akintobi. It's good to see you as always. Let's take a look at some of the headlines. Just before we go to the headlines, just to mention that today is the birthday of the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He's 65 years old today. Happy birthday to you, Mr. Vice President. I think it's no coincidence that he was born on the day that we have now chosen to celebrate International Women's Day. But let us see. I know that somehow, I know that he's also a big champion of women, so we women salute him today. Let us look at what the New Telegraph has on its front page this morning. APC convention, confusion over leadership of CECPC. Bello presides at CECPC meeting. Scribe has been asked to resign, says Chieftain. No leadership change in APC. That's from Akpanudo Edehe. It looks like they're still holding on. There's been a lot of discussion on that, so I'm not going to go into that. Look at this. IWD, we need to achieve gender parity. That's from women. As female industrialists seek more roles in economic management, governance, changing mindset key to accepting more women in leadership. That's from Lagos M1 President. I'm not sure what that acronym means, but you might flip to pages 6 and 8 to get the meaning. The men have done well. That's from persons living with disability. You might want to read the details on pages 6 and 8 as well. But let's focus on this one. It has a lot to do with the economy, which affects all of us. Native, 51 companies owe federal government 1.32 trillion naira as oil gas revenue dipped by 40% in 2020. 106.9 billion naira paid for subsidy in 6 months. Putting in context here that we've asked for 3 trillion naira to pay for subsidies this year, and we're looking at this other headline, which is right beneath that one. Petrol at fresh record as oil gas prices soar. So you find all of these stories lumped together, page 25. Nati saying 51 companies owe the federal government this much, 1.32 trillion naira. And we also know that oil prices are rising, and so will the price of petrol. What fears do you have, Mr. Akintobi, if you have any at all?
Well, something that's supposed to be a blessing is now turning out to be a disadvantage, because one would expect that with oil prices rising, more revenue is coming into the coffers of the government. But it turns out now that because of our particular economic peculiarity, the more the price of crude oil, that increases the landed cost of petrol and other finished products, which now means the subsidy the government is going to pay out is higher. They already don't have the money to pay the subsidy even as it is, which means they'll go out borrowing. Now, take for example diesel, which is not regulated and it's not subsidized. Yesterday I paid like 620 naira for a liter of diesel, and just a couple of months ago it was half that. So the problem becomes that Nigerians will end up enduring more hardship, because obviously the more the government borrows to keep petrol subsidized, and unfortunately because our refineries are not working, this is not a time we can even discuss removal of subsidy at all, especially not in an election year. So one way or another, the masses are going to feel the brunt of this, because when the government goes to borrow to make up the money that it's going to use to shore up the subsidy, at the end of the day, it's the masses that will end up being responsible for this. Now, the 51 companies that are owing so many trillion to the government, I don't understand why that should be such a difficult issue to resolve. We know who the companies are, we know where their accounts are, we know where their revenue generation is, and we've confirmed the fact that they do owe this money. It shouldn't be that difficult to be able to recover it or take them to court and get them wound up and their assets sold, because for as long as they continue to deprive Nigerians of having access to that money, it continues to compound our economic woes. Truth be told, the masses are not having it very easy at this time, and it's unconscionable that only 51 entities, there are millions, hundreds of millions of Nigerians individually, and there are hundreds of thousands of Nigerian companies as well. To think that just 51 of them would hold us to ransom for such a large amount of money that could go towards serving the public good is unconscionable. And I think that our government needs to begin to step up deterrence, punishment, penalties, not just on errant owing companies, but even on common criminals. Look at what happened in Lagos yesterday with this poor young lady who was found dead after entering a government transportation. The word ostensibly, which we haven't been able to confirm, is that she was murdered for her body parts for rituals. I think government needs to take a harder stand on ritualists and begin to punish them, even if it means capital punishment for a deterrent. I think part of the reason for the impunity in this country is because there's not enough punishment for errancy, for errant ways, whether corporate or individual. We need to begin to take a harder stand on wrongdoing, no matter who's committing it.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there for New Telegraph.
The Vanguard newspaper is next this morning, and it is also leading with politics, convention, drama in APC over Buni Niger governor, and has a pack of riders as usual. That's what you have on the front page. The Abba Chiari story is also there. Abba Chiari, 6 others docked, remanded in custody. Story is on page 7. But then there's this one. Strike. Call ASU to order. FG tells NLC. That story is on page 13. Is this reverse psychology or what?
Well, the latest from the government is that they've set up a renegotiation committee to look back at this agreement reached in 2009. They're now saying we don't have the money to keep up to our commitments, so let's sit back at the table and renegotiate this 13-year-old agreement. ASU says we're not having any part of it. We don't want to hear anything. You keep to the old agreement or you hit the highway. Point is, it's the poor students that are suffering. Irrespective of what ASU is saying and what the federal government is saying, it's the students that are at home. And they've given this committee 3 months to come up with this report. What does that tell me? This strike is not going to end after 1 month. It's a 1-month warning strike, but the renegotiation committee has 3 months to do its work and submit its report. So what does that tell you? The strike won't end after 1 month, and it is the grass that will suffer because 2 elephants are fighting. So negotiation, renegotiation, continue to negotiate, redo, rework, rewrite, restart, start, stop, forward, backward. Enough already.
I think the students are even transitioning from a grass to an elephant themselves. We've seen the Nance protests and all that, so it will be 3 elephants now fighting. No more grass in all of this.
And that's no longer wrestling. That is an all-out
war, right?
War. Mr. and Mrs., very quickly before you take on The Guardian, you bought ice cream, cake, candies, and wine to celebrate International Women's Day with me? You're a darling. This year, the theme is gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. That's Mrs. Mr. says, henceforth, the master bedroom will be called Master and Mistress Bedroom.
Oh, way to go,
nice.
Mr.
Nice one.
He just wants to win that election first.
I know, right? So watch out. You hear things like that now because people are planning for elections, right?
Yes.
And sounds like tokenism, but maybe we'll get there. The Guardian is next, and you see APC crisis, why Buhari approved Buni's sack. So that's also another angle to that one. You see parties neck to ratify CECPC's chair removal next week. So there's still a need for the neck in all of this. Bello Mom as group decries dismissal. ex-PGF DG explains his misdeeds. So we had a conversation with the ex-PGF DG on our sister program, Politics Today, and he spoke a lot about that as well. And you see this one: women seek end to discrimination and demand gender equality in leadership employment. So all of that you find on the front page of a Guardian newspaper this morning. Markway.
Well, let's take a look at what leadership has on its front page. And leadership has this: uncertainty over Boni's fate as Sani Bello takes charge of APC affairs. Excuse me. They also have this: we won't tolerate Nigerians joining Ukrainian army. That's from the federal government. And look at this: customs bows to pressure, suspends VIN automation system. That's also there. And in celebration of International Women's Day, women that will influence 2023 elections. And they have quite a list of them on the front page. Some of them you recognize immediately, some you might struggle. Page 2 will give you details. That story on energy prices going up. Brent hits $123 per barrel. Traders predict $200 per barrel price by month end. Okay, it's on the front page. And court to PMB AGF: don't tamper with Electoral Act 2022. So 2 stories I'd like to highlight here. The first is this: court to PMB AGF: don't tamper with Electoral Act 2022. It's a page 8 read. And this one: we won't tolerate Nigerians joining Ukrainian army. That's according to the federal government. I don't know what you make of these 2 stories. If you'd like to comment on them, what images come to your mind, or what lines of thought come to your mind when you look at the Electoral Act and also Nigerians joining the Ukrainian army?
Yes, on the Electoral Act, there's word that the president wants some amendments to Section 84, which is the one that talks about political appointees must resign their offices before they contest primaries to any elective office. The PDP went to court to go and say that the president should not seek an amendment to a law he has already signed, and that the proper way to amend the law is by getting it challenged in court, and that is doing an end run or a backdoor move to go and lobby the legislators to make some amendments to the act. My own sense generally is that the Electoral Act as passed is a good law, and I believe that it will deepen our democracy and make our elections more transparent, more credible. And if for any reason they believe there's some unconstitutionality in any of the provisions, the proper place to test that is the courts. No law is actually settled law until it has been challenged all the way to the Supreme Court. So the proper thing to do would be not to try and seek an end run around the past law by trying to amend it, but to challenge it in court. So I agree with that it's not the proper thing to do, and they should cease and desist. On the issue of Nigerians trying to sign up to go and fight for the Ukrainian army, and the Nigerian government's position that they won't allow it. International convention frowns on the use of mercenaries in conflict, in disagreements or disputes between countries. Primarily, morally, you've got to have a vested interest or a stake to be able to commit yourself to a cause. And if you're doing it just for financial gain, there's no telling where your loyalties lie. But other than that, for me, what is more poignant and telling is the sorry state that our country is in, that people will be willing to put their lives on the line for another country just for a mess of porridge. I think it is a sad commentary on where we are today in Nigeria as a people, that for $1,000 or however much they're being offered, people will be willing to go and die for another country.
It
It
is
is sad.
Well, it is sad, and let's just hope that as the federal government has taken a position on that, let's see what comes out of it.
Absolutely.
Mr. Dayo Akintobi, Editor-in-Chief, TCN, thank you so much.
Always a
for
pleasure
being
to be
part
here.
of this program.
Always a
this
pleasure to
morning.
be here.
Okay. Okay.
On behalf of them, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
We're back after now to take on the first issue for the day, the one these two gentlemen just talked about in a bit. Stay with us.